Welcome back to my channel. This is Katie Colleen and I'm going to be showing you how to make a large, flowy, elegant Lucina Fire Emblem cape. So to start out, we are going to pattern this ourselves to get the most full and flowy cape possible. First, I'm going to need to know how long to make this cape. So I got about 42 inches in length from my shoulder to about the back of my knee. I do all of my big patterns on wrapping paper, so I will be using this Christmas penguin wrapping paper for my pattern. Now we are going to need a neckline. You can take any pattern that has a neckline, you can take a t-shirt that you own, anything that just has some sort of curvature of the neckline. It doesn't have to be exact because we're going to smooth out later. So let's measure out 42 inches from the neckline. And I'm going to just move that 42 inches around the neckline, keeping a constant radius. Now at this point you can decide how much drape you want your cape to be. How wide do you want it to be? How large? So I decided I would have this cape open a full 180 degrees. That's huge. So right now I am patterning out half of the cape. So what you'll notice is this pattern is in fact too big to cut out a full half of the cape at a time. So due to the size restraints, I've decided to fold my half of a pattern into a fourth of a pattern. And this was also too big. So then when I folded that fourth of a pattern in half, I now have an eighth of a pattern. So what I will be cutting out is 8 pieces of this pattern that I have folded. So you are going to be able to get so much more cape out of your fabric if you are able to line them up with them sharing a diagonal like I am here. For that inside layer of the cape, I am using this micro suede fabric. I absolutely love it. It's a bit more expensive, but it looks like something royalty would wear. It feels like royalty. Now for the outside layer, I used this navy blue sportswear fabric. Beautiful color and again, nice weight and drape. Now to sew all of our pieces together. So I'll do a straight stitch down the edge, add another panel, then sew that seam, add another panel, sew that seam, and another, until I have this giant cape taking up a large expanse of my craft room. Do keep in mind that by the time you're sewing the final panels, this cape has gotten rather large. So you're gonna need a lot of space next to your sewing machine, or you're gonna have to get very creative on what you're gonna do with all this extra mass and all this extra weight. All of those will go under the serger as well, just to keep them nice and finished and have smooth edges on all those seams. Now we are going to repeat this same process with the outside layer, which is that navy blue. We're going to sew all the panels together, serge all of those seams, and now we have 2 giant cape pieces. Now we get to sew the 2 layers together. So I'm going to put them right sides together. This means that our serge seams are going to be facing on the outside for both sides. I'll only be sewing the 2 edges and the rounded semicircle part, leaving the neck hole open. And now it can be flipped inside out. So I'm just going to reach into this cape mass and flip it inside out through the neck hole. Now there's a few little details I decided to add onto our cape. I decided to be a little bit extra with this to have a top stitch going around the entire outside of the cape. I chose this top stitch pattern. If you would like to learn how to do the top stitch pattern, keep watching. If you just want to keep on going on to what's next for her cannon cape, then skip to this time step. Regardless of how you want to do the top stitch, I definitely recommend you do some sort of top stitch over the top. You'll see how the outer layer and the bottom layer, and you can kind of see the seam, it's a little baggy. So I definitely do a straight stitch if you don't want to do anything more elaborate. Now I decided that I wanted to do a more fancy stitch along the edge. So I'm using this sulky rayon in gold. So it will not work with a normal sewing machine foot. Well, it might, but it'll be a lot more painful. The cape was so heavy and it had so much mass that it was pulling it away as I was sewing. What I found to be successful was using this top stitch foot. So this foot has a little border which will define where the edge of the cape is. And it was so much easier to just line the edge of the cape up to this little metal foot, and then you'll always have the same spacing going around the cape. This also made it much harder for the weight of the cape to pull it out from under the foot since it had this border, and underneath the foot there is a space to hold the seam. Now that we have the cape part of the cape done, let's move on to that neck drape part. And I'm just going to use this rectangle of fabric to do that. Now we're gonna have to decide on a good amount of fabric and a good width. So we definitely want it to not be a turtleneck, and we don't want it to hang so loosely it won't actually hold the cape up either. So we have a few different options. I'm just going to drape it along my neck until I come up with something that I kind of like. Now that we know the length of that drape, we need to decide how much fabric we really want there. In the end, I chose about twice as wide of a width for the front of the neck drape as the back, just because the back will have that hood kind of filling it out. Now these neck drape pieces will also be lined just like the rest of the cape. I'm going to sew the sides together. So that is going to be just these sides I have pinned. You want to leave the other sides open to flip it inside out. Now we're going to sew the sides of those rectangles together. Now you may be wondering how that twice as big rectangle is going to sew onto a rectangle that's half as big. Well, what we're going to have to do is a gathering stitch. So we're going to make that seam about half as wide as it is now by gathering up the fabric. So I'm going to do this really wide gathering stitch along the edge. Make sure you leave a whole lot of extra thread on either side because we're going to have to pull this fabric together to gather it up. I'm going to take 2 of those strings from the same layer, and I am just going to wrinkle up this fabric. This is the same way you make ruffles. We're basically making a ruffle out of the side of this neck drape. And now we can sew the front to the back because now they are the same width. And now we have our neck drape separate from the rest of the cape. Now to move on to our hood, which is going to be also very large and very extra. I took the hood pattern from that Simplicity pattern that I showed earlier, and I'm going to extend it about 3 inches in all directions. This hood is going to be lined just like the cape and everything else is lined, so I'm going to cut out 2 of them. I'm going to sew the 2 halves of the hood together using a straight stitch. And now I have 2 hoods, one on each hand, and I'm going to stick one inside the other. Now we're going to sew that front part of the hood together. And then we can flip it inside out and our hood will be lined. And in order to match the top stitching I did on the cape, I'm going to do the same top stitching on the edge of the hood using all the same methods that I did for the cape. Now I decided to sew the hood to the neck drape, so I'm going to stick the hood inside the neck drape, and I'm going to sew the bottom of the hood to the back of the neck drape. What you want to keep in mind here is that when the cape is on, the hood will lay over the neck drape. Otherwise, if you ever tried to put the hood on, you would have this mass of fabric hanging around your neck stuck between the hood and your head. Now you can try on the neck drape and the hood separate from the cape. Make sure that this is exactly what you want because it's going to be much, much harder to change it after you have that giant heavy cape sewed onto it. Now to sew the cape on. So I'm going to take that top neckline of the cape. I did serge the end, and I'm just going to line the cape up to the back of the neck drape and hood combo. Now this is quite a few layers of fabric, so you may want to change to a sturdier needle. Now this cape is very heavy, so I decided to do 2 straight stitches. Now you should have your own giant flowing cape cloak thing for all your Fire Emblem dreams. If this wasn't quite what you were looking for but was very similar, you may also want to check out my Supergirl cape tutorial, so that should give you a few options for whatever cloak you are hoping to make. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.